So my topic for the day is Garbha Poshana, and before I start, I would like to thank all the acharyas who have left this rich heritage, this treasure trove that we can all continue to learn from, and generations to come will continue to prosper because of this knowledge that we have received through Dr. Nutan now. I'll take things forward from here. Firstly, we need to understand what Garbha Poshan is. Very simply put, Garbha, which stands for fetus, and Poshan, that stands for nourishment. There are three key objectives that Garbha Poshan is supposed to fulfill. The first one is to nourish the Garbhini. Garbhini is the pregnant woman. Only if she is nourished, through her, the Garbha is going to get nurtured. The Masanumasik Vruddhi, month on month, the development of the fetus is going to be dependent on how well the Garbhini is nourished. And of course comes the very important element of the mammary glands, because lactation has to take place. Even after taking birth, the fetus is going to be dependent on the Garbhini, even though she will be a Supika by then. So that is also another key element that Garbha Poshan needs to take care of. And this wonderful shlok from Bhagavad Gita, which tells us that how important it is to maintain a fine balance, to eat the right thing, to eat it in moderation, not to overdo anything, to also stay active so that, you can achieve that sense of satisfaction as well as growth without overdoing anything is what we will go through. Coming over to the next topic, what kind of ahar are we looking at? So आपको लेना तो है आहार, वो आपको पता है, but किस तरह का आहार लेना है? We need to focus on mitahar. Now on mitahar, there is this wonderful verse which you can all go through. When we look at mitahar, it has to be taken in the adequate quantity, like we just discovered. Plus, there are certain characteristics of mitahar which I would like to share with you. So first and foremost, what kind of ahar will qualify as mitahar? It has to be fresh. Now we all are coming up with these, fancy words of farm to fork. जितना जल्दी हार्वेस्ट होगा, जब वो उग गया है अनाज, वो जितना जल्दी हार्वेस्ट होगा और आपकी प्लेट पर आएगा, उतना वो फ्रेश रहेगा, उतना वो सात्विक और प्राणिक रहेगा. So that is a very important element. Along with that, वो कहाँ पर उगा है? It has to be native produce. जहां पर आप रहते हैं, जिस रीजन में आप रहते हैं, it has to be native to that land. That is a very important component of mitahar. It has to be pleasant not just to the taste buds but also to the palate. अगर खाने में बहुत टेस्टी है लेकिन आपका पेट उसको नहीं झेल पा रहा है, if it is a torture on your digestive system, it is not going to be pleasant in the long run. Also, it has to be genetically compliant. तो हम जो बचपन से खाते आ रहे हैं, वो obviously वो खाना है that our parents have been eating, that our forefathers have been eating. It is genetically compliant. Our genes identify that food. So only that kind of food is something that is going to nourish. Everything else is going to be foreign, and we will look at that shortly. Now, along with fulfilling all this criteria, it has to be cooked with love. वो जो स्नेह से बनाया जाएगा वही खाना बदन को लगेगा, otherwise it may not really work that much. It has to be cooked using heritage recipes. Now the beauty about heritage recipes is that our grandmothers knew what to put in what proportion, in what order, and to how much to cook it. Overcooking will not help, undercooking will not help. So they used to do slow cooking. Microwaves nahi the tabhi, and microwaves are a big issue in terms of nutrition and spoiling the nutritional profile of food. So using heritage recipes is very, very important. And also it has to be taken involving all the five senses. So we know कि पंच महाभूत जो है वो हमारे अंदर भी हैं. तो जब हम जमीन पर बैठ के खाएंगे, अपने हाथों से खाएंगे, टीवी वगैरह के डिस्ट्रैक्शन को दूर रख के खाएंगे, तब कहीं जाके जो है हमारे सारे सेंसेस को इन्वॉल्व करके we will be able to maintain that. And that is the kind of ahar or mitahar which will make sure that our doshas, our dhatu is balanced. The digestive fire, which is not just present in the Garbhini but also in the Garbh, that is also carried forward, and it is able to assimilate all the nutrition from mitahar. And of course it will also facilitate excretion of all unnecessary objects. Now let's take this concept further and understand the beautiful the beauty of portion. Like Ekta mentioned, there are pancha koshas, there are 5 sheets or layers of the body. So there is the first one, of course, is annamay kosh, the food body. And It is not just the gross body that it is working on, it is working on the subtle body also, it is working on the causal body as well. So there are षड गर्भाकर भाव, और 6 में से जो 5 है, except for पितृज भाव. The पितृज भाव also comes into play, of course, in the quality of the sperm. So the baby, the fetus, obviously the union of Shukra, Shonit and Atma. So the Shukra and Shonit element do come together and the Pitruj Bhav is involved. But once the Garbhini, once the woman is pregnant, then of course these वो जो भी अन्न ग्रहण करते हैं उससे ये सारे जो 5 भाव है, whatever elements have to go from the mother, the maternal factor or the matruj bhav. There is the soul factor, the atmaj bhav, which we will look at a little later also. So I'm putting that on hold here. There has to be stability. The womb, the garbhashay, which is the uterus, is home to the fetus for those 9 months, and the fetus has to feel at home in the garbhashay. If the fetus does not feel at home, then the satmaj bhav, the stability bhav, is going to be tricky here. The rasaj bhav is so important, so critical here, because the ras, or the essence of the food that the garbhini is taking, the essence is going to, the ahar ras is going to pass on to the child, and it's going to focus and rather build not just the physical body, but also the fetus's causal and subtle bodies. And of course, there is a Sattvaj Bhav of consciousness, of intelligence. So everything is so important, and it all starts from food. Let's look at that in a little more detail. Now, how does this food reach the child? How does the nutrition reach the child? So as we know, till the placenta and umbilical cord is formed, there are 2 processes through which the fetal circulation takes place. That's upsneha and upsveda. So like I said, whatever food the mother takes in gets converted into ras, and the rasa is also the first dhatu, as we know. So ahar ras, or the essence of food that she takes in, it strengthens the intrauterine environment. The uterus, like we said, is the home to the fetus for those 9 months. So गर्भाशय तक वो रस पहुंचेगा, वो intrauterine environment को protect करेगा, उसको nourish करेगा, उसके through, through ambu, the amniotic fluid, through that it will reach the fetus. Through the process, there are 2 different processes. One is exudation and diffusion, which is upsneha. So the tiny blood vessels, in the yolk sac will nourish the child through the ambu, or the amniotic fluid. And then there is osmosis. So from the high heat area to the low heat area, through the fetal skin also, nourishment goes into the fetus and reaches Anga Pratyang, each and every cell of the fetus, through these beautiful processes. Then, of course, towards the 8th week, the placenta and umbilical cord will be formed, and the journey forward will be taken over there. Now, very important to know pathya and apathya here, because, the Garbhini is described as a pot of oil, a pot filled to the brim with oil. And a little disturbance here and there can cause spillage, and we do not want unfavorable pregnancy outcomes. So let's look at pathya and apathya quickly. Natural and unnatural. I really like this line by Louise Hay. In one of her books, she says, eat what grows. वो खाइए जो उगता है, वो मत खाइए जो फैक्ट्री में mass produce होता है. I will just leave it at that. It is very simple to understand. Another thing is native and foreign, like I said. So things which are grown locally, which have been growing in that land, in that soil, since times immemorial, is what the body identifies. Anything else is foreign. It may taste very good. Pasta and pizza will taste very good. It is not something that the genes identify. The digestive system does not really gel with that. Agreeable and experiment. I would like to share a small anecdote here that I remember. Somebody had shared with me a lady in her family was pregnant, and the next day, she was scheduled for delivery. It was to be a planned cesarean, so it was a full-term child, and a C-section was planned for her. Pichli raat, for some reason, she was staying in her mother's house, and maybe she was craving it, or for some reason, she had, curry pakoda. So she had curry, the besan and curd curry with pakodas. Something went wrong with her digestion that night, which I think Dr. Nutan will be able to explain to us better. In the middle of the night, she woke up with severe abdominal pain. She was due for a scheduled C-section the next morning, but she lost the baby that night. This is the importance of following pathya and apathya, because every small error can cause something very tragic and irreversible. Let's move on from there. Another very important thing is to slow cook rather than having fast food. Unfortunately, there is a lot of, there's a lot of commercials around, quick eating, 2-minute noodles, and you just heat and you can keep this frozen, you can have it for 6 months. It will never be able to retain and provide the nourishment. In fact, it will be laced with preservatives and taste, enhancers. And if one were to just go through the list of ingredients and Google what those technical terms mean, one would never, you would never feed it to your child. Forget about eating it during pregnancy. So that is another very important thing, that slow cooked meals, home cooked meals, natural meals are always, they will be sattvic and rajasic. So they will be sattvic and they will be positive. They will retain nutrition and they will make one feel active and energetic, rather than the rajasic element combining with tamas, which is going to make the mother feel, the garbhini feel extremely lethargic and, so low and dull. Khate mein bahut acha lagega, baad mein, it will drop so fast that, she will not feel like doing anything. It will just, weigh her down in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So what will happen if, apatya ka agar palan karne lage, it is going to create toxins or ama in the body. Okay. And that is something that we need to avoid. If one follows patya, then it is going to lead to ojas. Ojas is not just the essence of all the saptadhatu, it is also vitality, to, loosely translated. So this is what one is looking for all the bodies, the gross body, the subtle body, as well as the causal body, for the garbhini as well as for the garbha. And another beautiful quotation, which is very close to my heart, I read this in a parenting book, which says, when you raise your children, you are also raising your grandchildren. There are 3 ways in which I interpret this in the context of Garbha Poshan. जब बच्चा पैदा होता है तो माँ बाप इतनी कोशिश करते हैं, family tries to feed them the best of things, fruits भी खिलाने हैं, nuts भी खिलाने हैं, सब अच्छा खिलाना है. These habit formations start when the child is in the womb. In fact, it starts even before, with the mother's nutrition herself, even before she conceives. So the mother needs to remember, the Garbhini needs to remember, her family needs to remember that whatever she is eating, that habit, or, that liking for that food is getting passed on to the child. Another important thing is, Dr. David Barker's hypothesis on the fetal origin of adult disease. So for example, if a mother gains too much weight during a pregnancy, if she's eating refined foods, if she's eating, empty calorie loaded food, if she puts on weight, that gene expression is getting transferred onto the child. And sooner or later, the child may turn out to be obese. That is just one small example. There could be several other diseases that the child could have in later life. And the last and very important thing here is that when a Garbhini takes care of her poshan during her gestation period, she is not just safeguarding the health of her child, but also of her grandchildren and of generations to come. So the reproductive profile, the endocrine profile, the cardio profile, every system of the child's body is taking on from the mother's body. And then the grandchildren will take that forward. So this again is something extremely important to remember. We'll take it forward from here. What we also need to remember, of course, we know that the 4th month onwards, the Daurita Kal starts. So the childhood, the manifestation of heartbeat begins. And for us, every child is a newborn baby. But it is only the baby, the body that is new, the soul that inhabits the body. It is an old soul and it has had its own previous journeys. So when the fetus, manifests a desire to taste something, to eat something, everything, of course, patya apatya has to be followed. But if there is something jo lagta hai ki, it is not, very healthy from that point of view, once in a while, it is a very good idea. It is recommended that the mother indulges in that so that she respects. She has to make the fetus feel at home. She has to welcome that soul into her garbhashay and to retain that soul. So it is important that she honors that, because it is only through her, it is only through the placenta and the umbilical cord that soul will feel that I chose the right womb for myself for this lifetime. We'll take this forward now. Garbhini Aahar. So a few things again, and a very important point that I want to make here is, this line again, I had read this many years ago and it is imprinted on my subconscious, I would say. We have to eat our food as medicine. Otherwise, we will have no choice but to eat medicine as our food. A lot of people dread old age because उनको लगता है कि taste चला जाता है, sensory control चला जाता है, हमारी body कमजोर होने लगती है, हमारा खाना हजम नहीं होता है. That is why people don't want to get old. I know of people who say, I don't want to live beyond a certain age because point क्या है? You can't enjoy anything. But that is, it takes us to the first shlok that I shared. Yukta Aahar Viharasya. तो अगर सब कुछ balanced होगा और अगर हम खाने को उसकी medicinal property के लिए खाएंगे, it does not have to be bland, it does not have to be non-tasty, but it has to meet these primary criteria. So the criteria quickly is, it has the food that she is taking has to be sattvic, pranic, hydrating, because ambu, water element is very, very important. Nutritious hona chahiye, easy to digest, because already, there is the womb, there are so many organs that are getting lesser space to accommodate the fetus. So we cannot overload the digestive system. So these points have to be met. Another one is it has to be purified by fire. A lot of raw foods, they have a lot of nutrition, but it has to be unlocked through the process of cooking. So it has to be purified by fire. That also makes it more nutritious, makes it easy to digest. Another thing is Ushna. So the Ushna element, the heat quotient of the food, has to be pacified. It has to be converted to sheath form so that it can be consumed and it can be digested. Sirf kha lene se kaam nahi banega. It has to be broken down. It has to be assimilated. Then it will get converted to Aahar ras, and then it will pass through the placenta. The Aahar ras will go through the child. So dry fruits especially, very important. Nuts, seeds, they all have to be soaked before consumption. Next point is it has to be gut bacteria friendly. Of course, gut bacteria plays a very, very important role. One of the key roles is, as ma'am rightly told us, that 90% of serotonin is created inside the gut. So the good bacteria has to be in far more quantity than the bad bacteria. So whatever food the Garbhini is taking, she needs to ask herself, is it meeting all these parameters? There are a few more. One is, of course, lukewarm water, because it will make sure it will ease digestion. And there have to be timely and moderate meals. She does not have to eat for two. She needs nutrition for two. So she needs to take nutrient-dense meals rather than calorie-loaded meals. It can be small in quantity, but ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए कि अभी खा लिया सुबह बहुत अच्छा nutrition मिल गया है अब सीधे रात को खाएंगे. That will not work for anybody or any of the purposes of Garbha Poshana. Taking this forward, some of the examples, of course, there are a lot of items that fit into this criteria, but some of these are particularly important. Shashtik rice is something that I researched, and it is so fascinating that in the olden age, when warriors came back from battle, they were specifically fed shashtik rice because it aids the healing of internal wounds as well. So you imagine how much it can, it can aid recovery, how much it can strengthen the body and, make sure that it is replenished all over again. Siri dhania or positive millets. हम सबको बाजरा, जवार, रागी, नाचनी, इतना सब हर किसी को पता होता है. But these are 5 millets that are called positive millets. I would recommend that you look up Dr. Khadar Wali. He's known as the millet man of India. And all these millets, they are not just extremely rich in fiber and protein and have a very solid mineral profile. They are also used as medicine for different conditions. So for a mother who has gestational diabetes, podo millet is going to work like medicine. Then, of course, there is nishpav or flat beans, which are extremely rich in folic acid, which a Garbhini needs. And 2 herbs which are very important are shatavari, and there is gokshura or gokru, which are going to serve different purposes. Shatavari is also very strengthening in nature, and gokshuru is very important in containing edema or swelling kind of symptoms. Of course, they have several other benefits as well. There are some other items that I wish to highlight here, which are on the next slide. Green leafy vegetables, also knowing when to eat, when not to eat. So right now, Chaturmas is on. These are those 4 months when the immune system is at its weakest. We are very vulnerable. This is not the time to eat green leafy vegetables, no matter how nutritious they are, because they are highly prone to fungal and bacterial infections. So sometimes even after cooking them well, they may still have the tendency to disturb the digestive tract, and it can have severe repercussions on a Garbhini and the Garbh. Of course, sprouts are extremely rich. They have to be cooked. Fruits which are native, local, seasonal, preferably eaten with the skin, rather recommended that eaten with the skin so that they retain the fiber and nutrient profile. Anjeer or figs act as laxatives, so extremely beneficial there. All the nuts are very, very rich in different vitamins and minerals, and they will make sure that there is no nutritional deficit happening. Of course, they have to be soaked. Khajur, as we know, is very rich in iron. Raisins also are rich in iron, very good for fiber. And haldi wala doodh, the way it is made in your culture, whichever culture the garbhini comes from, unke family mein jaise liya jata hai, it is highly recommended with some nutmeg and cardamom powder and some other sweetener. They can add palm jaggery, they can add honey, whatever. A few other things on the next slide, and then we conclude this portion, go over to the next. Ghee is highly, highly recommended. Ghee, in fact, can also be taken by those who are lactose intolerant. It is the most superior milk product ever, and it is used as medicine in Ayurveda, for a lot of variety of purposes. Oil, a lot of people do not know the difference between refined oil and filtered oil and cold pressed oils. So the best quality and the most nutritious oil to have is cold pressed oil. So this is something that she needs to remember. Nothing in excess, but cold pressed oil is what is recommended. Refined oil is also known as slow poison, by the way, which she may not be aware of, so needs to be told. Palm jaggery has a lot of benefits, extremely rich in iron. So a lot of garbhini feel that sweet craving. Ab har baar ice cream khana and har baar refined sugar khana is not a good idea. So palm jaggery is something which is again used as a medicine in Ayurveda, and so is raw unprocessed honey, not the mass manufactured processed honey that we get. So these are things that she needs to know of and consume if at all the need arises. Then, of course, there are, she has to stay hydrated. So curd and homemade lassi, homemade chas, not the Tetra packed ones that come with a shelf life of 6 months. Coconut water, sugarcane juice when it is in season. Again, preferably had before noon, because then the sugar gets assimilated and there's no sugar rush before she's going to bed, which can have other implications. Homemade kokum sharbat, homemade variali sharbat, which Gujaratis make a lot. Sauf ka sharbat is very good. Gulkand is another traditional item which aids digestion. So that is again very, very good. I think that brings us to the end of this. We come to the yoga practices for Garbha Poshana. Now, very important point that I want to make here is, and there is a lovely image that you will see, which I want you to pay attention to. Now, look at this couple. It is a mountain lion and her cub, her little one. You look at the expression on the little one. You see so much love, you see so much sneh, you see so much trust. The little one is looking up to the mother with so much, literally looking up to the mother. Also, being a young one, there is going to be chanchalta, there is going to be craving, there is going to be all sorts of, ki mujhe laad karao. It is the mother. Look at the mother's expression now. She has to hold her ground. She has to be steadfast. She has to manage that fine balance कि कब मुझे बच्चे को indulge करना है, कब मुझे easy लेना है, और ज्यादातर time कब मुझे अपना focus lose नहीं करना है, because I'm responsible not just for myself but also for my child, also for my grandchildren. With this attitude, the mother has to practice yoga. Okay, so what kind of yogic practices? Yam and niyam. So it is going to call for discipline. She has to follow all the yama and niyama. She has to be truthful. Ki main jo kar rahi hu, am I, on the right path? She has to do a lot of swadhyay. There has to be tapa. There has to be shauch. A lot of things from yam and niyam have to be followed. Asana and pranayam, we look at the next slide. And there has to be pratyahar also. So there will be people who will, maybe share some advice that may not be right for her. So she has to use her discretion. She has to do her swadhyay and maybe withdraw from certain advice that this is not in the benefit of my condition right now. So I have to withdraw from those kind of things, and negative thinking, of course. News, anything that's going to be disturbing for the manas is not going to be good. So some of the asana, of course, when she eating in Sukhasana is going to be very helpful. Sitting in Vajrasana after her knees is going to be very helpful. The Garbhashay, the womb, the uterus, all that, the whole area has to be nourished with food, nourished with oxygen, nourished with blood. So Baddha Konasana is going to be very, very helpful in that. It is going to send a lot of Aahar ras and oxygen and blood in that area. Malasan is not only going to strengthen the pelvic floor, it is also going to aid her excretion. So if she's having excessive digestive issues, this pose is going to help. If she cannot do it without support, she can sit on a block or some such firm support and she can continue. Supta Baddha Konasana. So it is the same Baddha Konasana or butterfly pose in a reclining position, which is going to help her. So if you look at the hand position, the hands are by the side, the chest is fully open. So a lot of oxygen is going to flow through and it is going to again nourish the intrauterine environment needs to be taken care of. So the Aahar ras, can freely permeate through the placenta and the umbilical cord. Supta Virasana, again, there is a very mild stretching of the lower abdominal area, which will also ensure that there is adequate blood supply going in there. Of course, there is Shavasana, which is the most underrated asana. And even before Shavasana comes Viparit Karni. So, Viparit Karni, whichever way she is comfortable, I have displayed two ways here. Some women who are maybe, not very comfortable taking the legs up the wall, they can keep some distance between the feet. In the picture, there is no distance, but they can keep distance between the feet to accommodate the growing abdominal region, or they can keep the legs on a chair or a sofa with a bolster or some sort of cushioning below the lower back so that all the load of the abdomen does not go there. And of course, there is Shavasana, which is going to calm not just the body, but also the brain, also the mind, and it is going to allow assimilation of all sorts of ahar, which is taken in not just through the mouth, but through, all five senses. And lastly, we come to pranayam. So there are a lot of pranayam practices that she can do. Equal breathing will help her regulate the breath. If the breath is uneven, if there is disturbance there, then it is definitely going to hamper digestion. So equalizing and regulating the breath matters. Anulom Vilom is extremely, extremely important for the cleaning or the free passage of oxygen through the pranic channels. So we have 72,000 nadis, as we know. So the cleaning of those channels will happen and there'll be free flow of breath through Anulom Vilom, which has to be practiced regularly. And then, of course, there is Ujjayi Pranayama. As the baby grows, as there is less of space, deep breathing may not be possible, but clavicular breathing, Ujjayi breathing, will make sure that there is no shortness of breath. She has to supply oxygen to the fetus as well. Then there is Brahmari, जो मन को शांत रखेगा, चित्त को शांत रखेगा, positive vibrations गर्भिणी और गर्भ दोनों को पहुंचाएगा. And of course, there is cooling pranayama. So if there is too much of pith, there is, the gastric fire, Agni is disturbed or vitiated, then Shitali and Shitkari kind of cooling pranayama is going to help. Yog Nidra is again going to relax every cell of the body, mind, and also keep the child and the child's consciousness at peace and ease. So this is something that I would recommend. I'm just the mode and I'm just sharing this. And once again, heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Nutan and to all the Acharya who left this wonderful wisdom with us. I really think the world has so much to learn from us. Thank you so much.